Welcome back to Daddy Debates, brought to you by musicfootballfatherhood.com, the podcast for dads who want more open conversations about fatherhood. And today we've got Nathaniel back with us, and we're going to delve into sex and relationships, and more so how we talk to young people and how we talk to young children and educate them about those topics as well. So thanks, Nathaniel, for being here. We've got Arion and Machel back too. We got you on this podcast because we know you do workshops with young people talking about sex and relationships. On MFF, we've done a little bit of work with some charities around sex education and RSC Day, and how us as parents can interact with our kids at schools around RSC and have conversations with our children as well. So it'd be really good to hear a little bit about your workshops. I know you've done a TED Talk, which I listened to, which is great. And you said a lot around, I guess, especially the boys that you work with, how they see some of the public figures in the Me Too movement, and how your workshops kind of play into that as well. So tell us about your workshops and what are the key takeaways that you found from them.
Yeah, so on the sex and relationships workshops, I cover a variety of topics. The key ones are pornography, like myth busting, I guess. Anatomy, so we get Play-Doh out, we make a penis and a vulva out of sort of obviously external part of the vagina.
Yeah, we know. Did you guys know?
Carry on.
This is like a workshop. You do a workshop with us.
Make those with Play-Doh, and I'll talk about all the different bits and what they do in their functions and hygiene. We do contraception and STIs, so like what they do, what they work, and like where to get help essentially. Healthy relationships, like communication, breakups, body image, and consent as well. So in doing all those different workshops, the idea is that ideally a group of children will have all of them over about 2 years. And then that gives them that information they need to navigate those difficult conversations or those life experiences where they're experiencing things for the first time. I think when adults kind of forget that there's a first time for lots of stuff growing up. And I think it helps that we do it because we come in as external people. You know, we don't know the kids, they don't know us, and I'm not a teacher, I'm not a parent, or not their teacher, I'm not their parent, so they don't have to have this conversation with me about masturbation and then see me down the hallway or the next day in English class thinking I said I watched this type of porn or whatever, you know. So we take away that embarrassment for them by being like external people in their lives, and I think it actually helps us quickly talk about some things with them that they'd probably have to take quite a while to kind of come around to. So I've been doing that work for a few years. My TEDx talk I did last year, probably one of the most stressful things I've ever done professionally. That was about consent, and when we talk about the Me Too movement, it was about particularly how boys are looking at things like consent in terms of how it fits into their lives and how they navigate relationships going forward. Because there's this growing thing of I don't want to get caught, or I don't want to get in trouble, or someone's lying about me, or people are trying to take things away from me, because that's kind of how it's presented to them in the media, like this, someone's lied and this happened, and vice versa. And in reality, it's not actually like that, but they're kind of forming their opinions around that at the moment. So it's about how we can debunk that and give them healthier tools to navigate relationships and sexual encounters. So the thing isn't, I must do this or say this or ask this so I don't get in trouble. It's I want to do this because I want to show that I respect the person, and that I want to also give consent, or because I understand that this is an exchange between us rather than covering my back.
Yeah. and you mentioned that it helps that you're not a teacher or their teacher or their parent. Yeah. So you two are both teachers. Have you had external workshops in your schools?
We haven't, but what we have done, and in the same principle that I fully agree with. So I did the boy talk for the older year that I didn't teach. So again, you've just got someone who isn't your day-to-day class teacher. It was just the boys from that year group, and it's supposed to be a safe, open space where I come in. They know obviously they're a teacher as well, but just letting them know we're going to talk about these things in a space that is different. So it's a different venue in the school, different person, just separating from the day-to-day. And I think that's important because I think the vulnerability that you need to have successful conversations around the work that Nathaniel does can often be predicated on being able to distance yourself. And you can't do that if you're talking to your parents about something personal. Sometimes your parents might want to distance themselves as well. They might find that an uncomfortable conversation. And I think it's very important to allow that vulnerability to flourish. And we're not necessarily doing that if we're having to have all those conversations ourselves.
What about you, Machel? Is it the same
Kind of similar. So I've worked in 3 different schools, and so I've worked in schools where outside, so similar to what Nathaniel was saying, outside organisations will come in and deliver certain sessions around sex ed, sex and relationships. I've delivered sessions, usually, as Aaron says, to groups of kids who I wouldn't have any other normal interaction with. So like almost essentially being an outsider, but they know I'm within the school. And then from a kind of pastoral perspective, because I'm a head of year as well, I've done quite a lot of assemblies, particularly around when the Me Too stuff broke out. I kind of made up a series of assemblies around male and female, almost like I called it toxic masculinity. So, and that's how I presented the assembly, but I had all the boys and girls there and was just talking about how society and media kind of portrays a narrative that as long as a boy is persistent with a girl, he will get the girl, and just trying to break down those kind of negative stereotypes around masculinity. So it's a weird one because I felt comfortable over some of the years delivering some sessions and not so comfortable around others. Like a couple of years ago, I had to deliver a session on STIs and things like that, and I didn't feel comfortable with doing it, not because I couldn't, but just because I didn't feel like I was equipped enough to be delivering it. Still went and did what I had to do, but it's such an important topic that if you don't, not just STIs, I mean sex and relationships in general, if you don't get the tone right, for some kids that's their one and only time, because there's no guarantee they're getting it from their parents. School might be the only time they properly do hear it. And then otherwise it's down to their friends and the internet. So I respect the fact that Nathaniel is coming at it from a kind of, not an outside perspective, but coming to work with schools and probably hitting the tone better than I would either as a parent or as a professional.
That's a good point around tone. I mean, like, so has your approach to these workshops changed over time? I assume you've learned some stuff and adapted. What's your general experience at the moment? You go into a school with a group of young people. How do you feel like they're feeling, and how do you feel?
It's weird. All schools are different, but all young people are the same. Like, they all say the same sort of stuff, even in schools up and down in London, outside London. They all say the same things, just how they say it is different. So you can kind of tell from when you go into a class from the time that what kind of tone the school has in terms of their approach to sex ed, and just I think other cultural aspects as well. Like, I've gone into schools where I felt it's quite misogynistic, and then you look around and it's like there's no positive reinforcement of women at all on the walls or anything. Or other schools feel a bit more plain. Or when we went to one school, there was like swastikas everywhere in the history class, and I was like, you know, this is just one aspect of history. You don't need to. Very weird session for me in that class. When I met the teacher, I was like, what is going on? It's like Churchill and gosh. Did go back there. So you kind of get a vibe from the school, like what they talk about, what they care about when you go into them. And also finding the first 10-15 minutes, it's like the kids, we do different activities to get the kids warmed up. So one of our exercises is we say, all right, you've got to work through the alphabet A to Z and say a word for each letter relating to sex relationships or identities. And they're like, hey, what? Anal. And so that kind of gets the laughs out of the way back. And I'll go around and talk to each pair or group about what they're saying and how comfortable they are to engage with me. Lets me know like what kind of session it will be. There is a bit of a privilege like being a guy doing this work. So most like I find a lot of sex ed workshops and kind of workshops in schools are done by women, and so I have that privilege of that. For me, from a group of boys, they kind of listen to me more than they'd probably listen to facilitate less women. And then when I go into, if I'm at a girls' school and a class just with girls, the schools tend to, even if it's a mixed school, they'll still split them by gender a lot of the time. Then I have that. Then if I'm in a class with just girls, they listen to me because I'm a man that's not a teacher that's come in. So it's just like, oh, who's this? Which I just have to try and use those things to my advantage to get the material across. So I try and the material and the slides, essentially the presentation stays the same. We don't adapt it to what school we're in. Like we'll teach the same things across the board. So, you know, when I work with sex planes, when I do this with it's like an intersectional feminist approach, and so we're trying to look at our definition of sex as broad. It's not just penis and vagina sex. When we talk about things like body image or hair, it's like we acknowledge that different types of people have different types of hair. So I'm not going to encourage you to say you must grow your hair, because that might have a different effect than other people growing their hair, so on and so forth. So we always try and have that same approach. Like we do a workshop that when we look at anatomy, you know, the sectional periods, for instance, that stays in there regardless of who's sitting in the seats. As the kids get older is probably where my tone changes. So when I can kind of tell that they're engaging in sexual activities, then I might be a bit more real with them in terms of like give them a bit more details of, if you want to get an SR test, this is how it works. If you want to have, you know, we have these scenarios that we talk to them about in terms of like what scenarios are okay and not okay in sex. Might try and give them a bit more of a real life perspective on that. It's really important as facilitators that we're not just telling our own stories, because for me, my view is talk about sex with kids is illegal, or the sex I have. So I just we always try to separate like the real life from, or our real life experience from whatever we're delivering. And I feel like when it's around puberty age, I'll try and be a bit more open with them about like, oh, you know, this thing takes time, it takes years. Like in the sessions that we're doing those from like year 7 to year 9, that stuff about puberty. I remember once I had it was just an annoying group, like lots of talking, and I just said to the kids, I was like, it was all boys, I was like, boys, I know you're all walking around thinking like they have a bigger dick than you, or they have a bigger dick than you, or whatever, because I know, because when we raised hands earlier about who watched porn, everyone said yes. So I need you to like get in the room with me, and like being able to say something like that with them, like help them be like, oh, actually this guy, he'll say things that an adult probably won't say to me.
Yeah. So a couple of things you said there, because I'm really interested in, you know, we all have young children. My daughter's 4, so I haven't obviously started those conversations with her yet. But what kind of age do you start those workshops at? And I guess for you too as well, like, do you think about kind of at what age those conversations might come up as well?
I think about it probably from a teaching perspective. So when the lowest that you kind of get an introduction to RSE is very basic, and I've taught that in previous years, where you're basically labeling anatomy, using the correct terms, and that might seem it's not groundbreaking, but actually if someone doesn't know the correct terms, that's where the ignorance can begin. And
what kind of age is that?
That's year 2. So there'll be 6 going on 7.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's very basic. It's literally, you've got like a diagram. These are female body parts. These are male body parts. And again, like Nathaniel, you kind of get the giggles out the room. Okay, who's heard of any other words? And everyone kind of like whispers like what they've. Okay, we're just going to just say it. And you get it out of the way. But it's important to kind of get that, to remove that barrier. So they are aware of just like what is real life, and to provide a foundation for what happens later on. So I think from the perspective of a parent, I haven't yet, because my son's 2. I haven't yet thought about it going that far ahead. But certainly in terms of knowing things as important as private parts are private, you know, so it's like mommy, daddy might check something for you, a doctor might check something for you, but another individual who is not a trusted individual, that's a no-no. Knowing how to name what body parts are as well, and breaking down any kind of taboo over that as well, because...
You're saying you've done that already, or you're saying...
No, so that's something like going forward, yeah. But yeah, just breaking down that taboo of just, we have body parts, because that's what leads to so many problems going further down the road, where people don't want to have a discussion that even starts as basic as that, and therefore they aren't going to have discussions that are more crucial to any kind of sexual activity they might have, and then you're facilitating the ignorance. It's a bit like when people feel that they might not get pregnant after having sex for the first time, which I'd like to think is more of a rarity these days, that people don't have that view anymore. But that's how you get those views, because you don't have the conversations from the very basic standpoint and then build up.
Yeah, and that's interesting. When I said I hadn't had those conversations, thinking about that, actually I have. The first one was by accident, because I was weeing and my daughter came in and she was like, "Why are you standing up weeing?" I sit down. Just explain to you why boys stand up weeing. You know what I mean? And we have had a conversation about private parts and stuff like that. I mean, Machel, is it the same for you in terms of in your school?
So I didn't know actually from a primary perspective when it starts. I've always taken the notion of my first conversation will be, well, you can't pick an arbitrary time, but I do know that the number one thing that's running in my head around introducing a child to sex ed and introduce them early is actually it's important from an abuse perspective. And maybe it's a bit deep to be raising that within the context, but the more equipped a child is with understanding the boundaries around sex ed, is the greater the chance of them disclosing something to you if something was to take place. And actually, so when Nathaniel was talking about speaking to kids and getting certain words out and X, Y, Z, that's also important because a child's comfort around certain terminology can be a gateway to understand that maybe something's going on that they shouldn't be going on. And I'm not just talking about the consent between two kids. I'm talking about obviously something bigger than that. So actually, it's a very important conversation to have relatively early on, in at least distinguishing body parts, as Arion says, and making them understand no-go areas from other. I don't know how to have that conversation because I've not had it yet, but I will certainly be trying to verse myself on the best way to have that kind of conversation. Maybe you can tell me.
Another workshop.
It comes organically though. I mean, like Elliot said, like you start having those conversations, even though my son is 2, you start having those conversations quite organically when your child sees you go to the toilet, and when they become curious about their own body parts. So I think you start just having those conversations, and because as more modern fathers, we are open to those conversations, it isn't shut down. Where previous generations, it might have been, "Oh, well, what's that? We don't talk about that. That's not helpful." Whereas now, if any of our children would say, "Well, what's that?" you'll tell them and you'll explain, "Okay, well, that's what this is for, and this is what boys do, this is what girls do," and we'll break that down to them in a way where, again, we're just reducing the stigma or eradicating the stigma.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. It's about just getting used to having that conversation. I mean, I think, so me and my daughter are really close, and I have this thing of like, we're always going to be this kind. She was come and tell me about anything, but actually, as she becomes a teenager, she's maybe not even me. I hope not me. Maybe she will be a bit more uncomfortable when I talk to her mum about certain things, and that's fine as long as that's cool. As long as she's one of us, she can go to that's cool. But I was going to ask around your workshop. So you said that it's the same material. Is there a different approach to the boys and the girls at all, or do you feel like you just deliver the same?
I deliver the same. But the slides differ between year groups. So for year 7s, we don't talk about contraception STIs because for me it's just like they need to know more things about like healthy relationships and communication and kind of boundaries as opposed to engaging in sexual activity and how to manage that. So I think in terms of the workshops, the material stays the same. I try and meet them where they're at. So sometimes when we talk about consent, like not everyone gets it. Sometimes I'm in boys' classes and they're saying things like, "Well, why would I ask?" Or, why would I do these things like that? Then I'm going to be seen as weak or silly or.
How do you respond to that when you get from their perspective, they're just like, well, why? Like, how do you respond to that?
So in those moments, it's like trying to bring the level down, make sure no one's like shouting. Because sometimes if it's a mixed class, normally the boy says that, oh, the girls fight onto it. So things like that, why don't ask, like, shouldn't I just do it? It's like, well, it's a really hard line because you don't know what that child's experience is either. So I don't say, well, how would it feel if someone did just you go, man? Yeah. So you kind of be like, well, it's about respect, things like that. About respect, like showing, how do you show you respect people? You listen to what they're saying, you talk to them, and you might treat them a certain way. It's like all I'm talking about here in terms of navigating relationships is about respect as well. Like if you want to be respected, you treat people how you want to be treated as well. If someone did those things to someone else and they didn't like it, then is that a good thing? Yes, no, like sort of a simple answer. So you got to really try and simplify it to be like something that gives them that understanding of, oh, actually, yeah, you're right. One thing we use sometimes is about this, like a breakfast analogy when it comes to consent. Like you've said to someone, oh, my favorite breakfast is a bacon sandwich with just tell my actually my probably old school favorite breakfast was cheese sandwich, pepper sauce. And say my girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, like knows that, and they make that for me one day, and because I've asked them to, and then they give me that sandwich all the time, and I ask for breakfast. But imagine if they know that, and then they give me an egg sandwich with brown bread and with runny yolk, and say I must eat that because they've made it, because they've made breakfast for me. I'm like, well, that's not what I want and not what I've asked for, so why are you then going against what I want and ask for? So that scenario allows them, because it's breakfast, of like, would it like to get something or receive something from someone that's done the right thing before or the good thing before, and then knows what you want and like, and you said what you want and like, and then still does something else. Like that kind of gets that message across of this is what it's like when things happen and people aren't consenting to them because someone else is just doing. So when you're talking about like, why would I ask or why would I do this? It's how it feels. Like you feel like being ignored, disrespected, and not cared for or cared about by another person that might have actually shown those same signs before that they do care and like you.
And this is great. I feel like when I was in school a long time ago now, but it was maybe about sex. I know. I'm getting older. The fact that I even have to say that now is crazy, right? But it was more about just the physical act of sex. It wasn't necessarily about the relationship side. Like, do you find that how much of your workshops are the relationship stuff and how much is the pure kind of anatomy, physical act of?
I talk about relationships and I say they can be 1 day or 1 year or 10 years or however long. I do try and be honest with the young people and say, people when they do engage in these activities, they tend to at least know the person a bit. You might, have met on a night out or whatever, but might talk to each other. Like it's not, I think, because of maybe I pigeonhole it too much, but like pornography is not much speaking, right? It's just the act. So if kids are watching that, and then I don't know about you, but when kids are younger, they might talk, they might say I had sex, but they don't really say how. It's not like I did this and this and this. It's just, oh yeah, I did that. So try and reinforce that idea of communication. So we have these 3 non-negotiables in sex, which are communication, consent, and contraception or protection, if that's what they want. So if you reinforce things like that and then link that to interactions with people, regardless of how long they've known each other, those 3 things can still be there. It's about kind of reinforcing that idea that people should be comfortable enough to say things or to do things. We go through non-verbal communication and verbal communication. So we give this big like picture with verbal signs of consent, verbal signs of non-consent, non-verbal signs of possible consent, non-verbal signs of non-consent. So the reason why we say possible for non-verbal is because, a hug for me might mean something, a hug for someone else might mean something else. But we talk about like body language. So if someone's looking in your eyes, someone's smiling, happy, like responding to intimate touch, kissing you back, those sorts of things are signs that they're probably into what's happening. When someone freezes up or avoids eye contact, or starts crying, or just not speaking, or isn't moving things forward in terms of that people might be kissing and then the other person moving hands away, moving away, like those are signs that someone maybe doesn't want to do something or isn't into what's happening, or if their body, it's a bit weird with bodily reactions because there's some things that that body's going to react a certain way regardless of how someone feels emotionally. And then with the verbal signs of consent, it's like, yes, this feels great. I would like to do this. I love this when this happens. Can we try this? Like it's language that's engaging. And then when it's the signs of no consent, it's like, someone's downstairs. No, stop. Can we not do this right now? Actually, can we do something else? Language that kind of moves us away from an act. So giving them all those things, letting them talk about what they mean. And a thing I've been doing lately in the last year is trying to get them to understand how they would feel if someone was moving away from them, if someone was not reacting or responding to the touching and the kissing, like how would they feel, to get them to get, normally the point is they feel embarrassed, but they don't say that. So after a few minutes of talking about it, so I feel embarrassed, or how are you then going to react? Because that's also what's important, in any relationship, one night or whatever. How you react, like you should be able to say, well, actually, this you doing these things is making me feel this way, but not to make the other person feel bad, but just to share how you feel, so that it doesn't end up being like an explosion of anger or something else. Because doing all that shows that you still care about the person in the interaction, and maybe it's sometimes about letting go of the fact that you might not have something in that moment, but it doesn't mean it's never going to happen or anything like that. It's just being able to share how something's making you feel and respecting the other person.
No, this is really important. I feel like as parents as well, obviously it's Daily Debates podcast, a lot of parents will be watching, and they probably won't know a lot of the stuff you're saying in terms of what their kids are learning in school around relationship and sex education, and they won't know how to then engage with their children with the content. So I was going to ask, like, I guess from a teacher perspective and from a facilitator as well, what should parents be doing to support, or not even to support, maybe to lead on, how should they be engaging with their children around this stuff, around RSE?
I think finding out what the school is saying is definitely important. So we always hold a meeting for parents to come, and it can vary in terms of how well that is attended. But I think it's worthwhile coming to that meeting to know what your child's going to be told, to know what you can therefore build upon, and what you can just reinforce. And just the awareness of, like, I want to know what my child is being told. So I think that's the first thing, just engaging in that and just not dismissing it as, the school will take care of it. But I think also having conversations as well at home, or being open to conversations at home, is important. Because if a child says, today we've had RSE, or however they refer to it in their respective school, and they come home and they say, well, my teacher spoke about X, Y, Z. What's that about? That could be because of a disclosure that they want to make. That could be out of curiosity. That could be because they're maybe sexually active or on the brink of becoming sexually active, and that's something that's quite crucial for them to know. And if we shut those conversations down as parents, then that's just unhelpful. But I think we also have to think about, if we're not comfortable having that conversation, providing another avenue for the child and not shutting it down. So having a son, I potentially will find it easier to have these conversations with my son as he gets older. If I had a daughter, I would like to think that I would have the same ease, but I might not. If I'm being real, I might not, because I might have an unease about thinking, if she asks me these questions because she's going to do something that I don't want to think about. And that's okay. But it means that I can't shut that down. It has to be, well, Mom can talk to you about that. Or even if I do have that unease, just sucking it up and just saying, but that's my discomfort is less important than you having these conversations. And just saying, yeah, it might not be comfortable, but we're going to have that conversation. And I think whatever we do, we have to just make sure we don't shut down the conversation.
And I think the dads and daughters thing is so relevant. I mean, so we're discussing the TI incident where he took his daughter to check her hymen to see if she was still a virgin, which is crazy. And I think everyone agreed that was mad. And I guess, as dads, we have that natural thing to want to protect our daughters, but obviously TI took it to the extreme. Like, Machel, you've got a daughter, obviously very young, but how do you ever think about what your role is going to be in in those kind of conversations when she's older?
I mean, I'm kind of conflicted about it because us as new age dads, we want to believe, oh, we'll have these open conversations. My daughter can come to me about anything, and I'm just gonna have an open, honest conversation with her. That's what I truly want to believe will happen. However, like Aaron says, I think there will be some moments of anxiety around it, but not so much about not wanting to have a conversation, about am I saying the right thing, more than if I'm going to have the conversation or not. And actually, I was going to say to Nathaniel, and I'm open to be a business partner as well, because if you haven't thought about it, actually, there's probably a gap in the market for parents
100%.
learning about how to deliver. Not sessions, but how to have open conversations with their children. Because I think back to when my parents did it with me, we didn't have a conversation. What happened was, and Dad, Mum, if you listen to this, sorry, but what happened?
They listen to the podcast.
Yeah,
They did listen to the podcast.
Yeah. So what happened? What happened is that when I was 11, it was around Christmas time, and I remembered coming upstairs to my bedroom, and there was just a sex ed book on my bed. It just appeared from nowhere. But it was like a cartoon version of everything. Now, in fairness, I did read it. And in fairness, it did teach me stuff. But in hindsight, I probably would have preferred a conversation. Because obviously I was intelligent enough to take on board what the book was telling me. But the questions I had couldn't be answered by the book. So my next port of call was then school. But the lessons I had in school were like biology lessons. And like the biology teacher would be like, oh, if you've got any questions, put them in the confession box. So my sex ed thing was like, I didn't have any basically. So now I look back for my parents and wonder, was that because they obviously felt that was the best approach. But what I'm saying is, but they possibly felt like they weren't equipped to have the conversation the right way. So that's what I'm saying to Nathaniel. Actually, yeah, sessions for kids in school, but I wonder how many parents would attend or benefit from something that's like how to communicate with your children in the right way. Do you get where I'm coming from? So I just think there's possibly a niche there as well, because I'd attend.
Yeah.
Just to make sure I'm saying the right thing.
Yeah. And that's because you want to, actually your parent wants to say the right thing. I find because SO is coming into school, like mandatory soon into school, so a lot of schools are worried because they don't have the resource to do it.
So what's coming in?
Sex and relationship education being mandatory. So is it from primary as well? Yeah. So primary and secondary. Because at the moment with schools, a lot of schools can just essentially teach what they want as long as the kids are being entered into exams and stuff. So like when we're going to schools now, they're opting into having us come down. But soon it'll be like the fact of they need to do something and ideally go. So.
Well, a lot of it is included in the science curriculum.
Yeah. From that like biological point of view.
But not as much the relationship stuff. PSHE.
So is that going to be mandatory as well, the relationship stuff?
Yeah. So there, as it's now being termed as RSC, and I think probably deliberately putting the R for relationships first, to put that emphasis on. It's not just the traditional sex ed.
So with all of that, it's like, parents need to. It's hard because I'm not a parent, so I don't know how it feels. But I think parents need to be comfortable that their kids are like their own people. I had a kid ask me how to come out as bi to their parents, but they had done it to their school, so their whole year had known, but the parents didn't, and I was like. Because of the fear of how they feel, and it's as parents, I think the main responsibility is making them. You want your kids to be able to tell you stuff about their identity and just about their sexuality and stuff. So, but parents need to be prepared that the child might not be what they thought it would be. I don't know, because it's all linked. Like they're all part of what makes kids, young people, and stuff. So. It's about being able to create that relationship where they want to come and talk more than anything. So when it comes to coming down to sessions, we get more pushback from parents that don't want to do it than parents. But the parents that do want it, they off their kids in, right? So we get a lot of pushback from parents that don't, and it's like yeah, sometimes we need to acknowledge or accept that the kids normally want to work or to talk about these things. It's like a head-to-head with the parents. So I don't know. It's like build solid foundations for kids so they can make that.
And I feel that's why it's so important to do this. I think there are some parents who I've read are against RSE mainly because of LGBT issues is a big part of that as well. And hopefully they can watch something like this and understand the learning. But what you've just said there is that ultimately the kid is living in this world of their own person. And of course you're their parent, but they're their own person, right? And as a parent, we should do all we can to just equip them with what they need to know to navigate in the world and stuff like that. There's loads more we could talk about. Literally, there is loads more we could talk about. But this has been a good start. Maybe we'll do a part 2 at some point. You've got a new business partner here as well, so I'm sure we'll do it. We'll do an MFF mates rates though, right? An MFF session for the dads to talk about how they have conversations. But this has been really good. So thanks so much, Nathaniel, for coming and sharing all your work. We have been Daily Debates podcast brought to you by musicfootballfatherhood.com. On this topic, please go and check out Family Stability Network Boston. We've done some work with them on our website around RSE Day and how you can interact with your child's school around the content as well. So please do check that out. Follow the conversation on Twitter and Instagram, #DailyDebates and @MFFOnline_. Thanks so much.